The first time Claire Whitaker called me the man she should have married, I was holding a casserole dish in both hands, standing in her parents' dining room, while her actual fiancé sat 3 chairs away polishing his smile like a weapon. That was how my Saturday night exploded. My name is Evan Brooks. I was 27 then, in the summer of 1998, and I worked nights as a radio producer at a small AM station outside Cleveland. Mostly I cut commercials for tire shops, queued up baseball scores, and tried not to fall asleep during gardening call-in shows. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid my rent, kept me in coffee, and gave me a reason to pretend I wasn't lonely. Claire used to live across the hall from me in a brick apartment building with thin walls, radiator heat, and a lobby that smelled like dust, lemon cleaner, and somebody's burnt toast. She was 26, a hospital receptionist with sharp green eyes, a laugh that could start in one room and brighten the next, and a habit of leaving little post-it notes on my door. Borrowed your plunger, don't ask. Your laundry beeped. I saved your jeans from strangers. You left your headlights on again, genius. For 2 years, we were neighbors in the way people used to be before everything became instant and invisible. We knocked on doors. We borrowed sugar. We'd listened through walls without admitting it. We shared takeout on the floor when both our lives felt too tired for furniture. And I loved her quietly, not dramatically, not in a way that made speeches under rainstorms, just in the ordinary, dangerous way a man starts knowing how a woman takes her coffee, which songs make her wash dishes slower, and when her smile has too much effort behind it. Then she moved out. No big scene, no fight. She got engaged to a guy named Blake Hammond, who owned boat shoes despite living nowhere near a boat, and moved into his townhouse in Lakewood. I told her congratulations like my chest wasn't folding in on itself. That was 8 months before the dinner. The invitation came on a Thursday afternoon, tucked under my apartment door in a cream envelope, because Claire had always hated calling during my sleep hours. Evan, Mom keeps asking about that nice neighbor who fixed your sink and never stole your mail. Family dinner Saturday. Come if you can, please? Claire. There was a little smiley face after her name. I stared at that word. Please. A smarter man would have thrown the invitation away. A less lonely man might have had plans. I had neither intelligence nor plans, so that Saturday I put on my best blue shirt, bought a bottle of wine I couldn't really afford, and drove my dented Ford Escort to her parents' house with Bruce Springsteen playing low on the cassette deck. The Whitaker house looked exactly like Claire had described it. White porch swing, yellow kitchen light, a maple tree out front with roots pushing up the sidewalk. Her mother hugged me like I had returned from war instead of apartment 3B. Evan Brooks, Mrs. Whitaker said, patting my cheek. Claire talked about you so much I thought you were imaginary. Claire appeared behind her, barefoot, wearing a navy dress and an expression I couldn't read. Hey, neighbor, she said softly. Nobody had called me that since she left. Hey, stranger, I said. For 1 second, the room went quiet around us. Her eyes dropped to my shirt, then back to my face, and something warm and painful passed between us. Then Blake's voice cut through it. You must be the famous Evan. He was tall, clean-cut, and handsome, in the way salesmen in mall jewelry stores were handsome. Too much confidence, too much cologne. I don't know about famous, I said. Oh, you are in this house. He put an arm around Claire's waist. She stiffened almost too slightly to notice. Almost. Every family needs a helpful neighbor in the archives. Dinner started fine. Roast chicken, green beans, potatoes. Her father asking me about radio like I personally knew every singer on the charts. Claire sat across from me, and every time our shoes accidentally touched under the table, she pulled back like the floor had sparked. Then her younger sister Megan grinned over her water glass. So, Evan, she said, were you in love with Claire or what? The table froze. Claire whispered, Megan. Blake laughed first. Come on, honey, let's hear it. The loyal old neighbor, very romantic. I felt heat climb my neck. I reached for my glass, buying time I didn't have, but before I could lie, Claire set her fork down. No, she said too calmly. Everyone looked at her. She looked at me. Then she turned to her family, to Blake, to the whole room full of people waiting for a joke, and said, He's the man I should have married. The grandfather clock ticked once. Blake's smile vanished. And Claire reached under the table, found my hand, and held on. No one moved. Claire's hand was warm around mine, trembling just enough to tell me she knew exactly what she'd done. Blake stood so fast his chair scraped the floor. "Claire," he said, voice low, controlled, furious. "Kitchen, now." Her father cleared his throat. "Blake?" "No, Mr. Whitaker. I think my fiancé and I need a private word." Claire didn't look at him. She was still looking at me as if my face was the only safe place in the room. I should have let go. That would have been decent. Respectable. The kind of thing a man does when he is not trying to ruin a dinner, an engagement, an entire family's understanding of a woman they loved. But her fingers tightened. So I held on 1 second longer. Then she released me and stood. The kitchen door swung shut behind them, but old houses don't keep secrets well. Their voices came through in sharp, broken pieces. "Humiliate me!" "I didn't plan it." "You never plan anything, do you? You just drift and let everyone clean up after you." "That's not fair." "Fair? You said that in front of him." A silence. Then Claire, softer but clear enough to break me. "Because it was true." Mrs. Whitaker closed her eyes. Megan stared at her plate, guilt replacing the mischief on her face. Mr. Whitaker looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Not anger, not welcome, maybe warning. I pushed back from the table. "I should go." "No," Mrs. Whitaker said immediately. "Yes," I said. "I really should." I found my wine bottle still unopened on the sideboard, absurdly formal in the wreckage. I left it there. Outside, dusk had settled blue over the lawn. I made it halfway down the driveway before Claire called my name. She came out barefoot again, arms wrapped around herself. "Evan, wait." I stopped beside my escort. The driver's side door still stuck unless you lifted the handle just right. Claire knew that. She'd laughed about it 100 times. "Don't say that if you don't mean it," I said. Her face tightened. "I did mean it. That makes it worse." She flinched. I hated myself for it. But I kept going because if I stopped, I might reach for her. "You're engaged. He's in there. Your family's in there. I'm not some line you use to escape a bad night. You think that's what you are to me? I don't know what I am to you anymore." A car passed behind us, headlights sliding over her face. For a second, she looked younger, like the woman who used to sit cross-legged in my apartment, making fun of late-night infomercials while rain tapped the windows. "You were home," she said. I swallowed. She looked down at the driveway. "When I lived across the hall, you were the only part of my day I didn't have to brace myself for." "Claire." I kept waiting for you to say something. The words hit like a door opening onto a room I'd convinced myself didn't exist. I let out a humorless laugh. "I kept waiting for you to be single." "I was." "You were dating Blake half that time. Because you never said anything." "That's not a reason to marry him." "I know." Neither of us spoke. Somewhere inside, Blake shouted her name. Claire closed her eyes. I wanted to tell her to come with me. I wanted to be reckless and noble and selfish all at once. Instead, I said, "End it because it's wrong. Not because I'm standing here." She opened her eyes, wet but steady. "And if I do?" The question hung between us with no answering machine to catch it. No message to edit, no safe delay. Just air, just choice. "If you do," I said carefully, "call me." Her mouth trembled. "You work nights?" "Leave a message." "What if you don't call back?" I almost smiled, but couldn't. "Then you'll know I'm a coward." She stepped closer and touched the dent in my car door with her fingertips, like it was something familiar she had missed. "I don't want to hurt everyone." "I know, but I think I already have." Behind her, the porch light flicked on. Blake stood in the doorway, his tie loosened, face pale with anger. "Claire." She didn't turn right away. I opened my car door. It groaned like an accusation. "Good night, neighbor," she whispered. That nearly undid me. I drove away with no music on, only the rhythmic click of my turn signal and the roar of blood in my ears. At my apartment, the red light on my answering machine was dark. I sat beside it anyway until after midnight, still in my blue shirt, waiting for a call that did not come. At 1:17 a.m., the phone rang once. Then stopped. I stared at it, breath held. A minute later, it rang again. This time I picked up. No voice. Just street noise, wind, and the faint mechanical hum of a payphone. Then Claire whispered, "I'm at the Shell station on Lorraine. I gave him back the ring." The line crackled. "Evan?" I was already reaching for my keys. The Shell station was lit like a stage at the end of the world. Claire stood beside the payphone with her arms folded tight, a small overnight bag at her feet. The diamond ring was not on her hand. Her left finger looked pale and naked under the fluorescent lights. I pulled up too fast. She didn't run to me. I was grateful for that. If she had, I might have mistaken panic for love. I got out slowly. "Are you okay?" She nodded, then shook her head. "I don't know." "Did he hurt you?" "No." "A beat." "Not with his hands." That answer settled between us. The attendant inside watched through the glass, pretending not to. A radio behind the counter played Shania Twain low enough to sound like a memory. Claire's hair had come loose from its pins. She looked tired, frightened, and certain in a way that scared me more than doubt would have. "I can take you to your parents," I said. "I can't go back there tonight." "Megan's?" "She'll tell Mom. Mom will cry. Dad will stare at the wall. I can't." I glanced at the bag. "You packed?" Blake threw it into the hallway after I gave him the ring. My hands curled, but anger was easier than what I felt, so I kept it quiet. "You can take my bed. I'll sleep on the couch." Her eyes searched mine. "Evan, I mean it. Nothing happens tonight." Something in her face broke. Not disappointment. Relief. In the car, she held the overnight bag on her lap like a shield. I drove with both hands on the wheel, the way people do in bad weather, though the night was clear. Halfway to my building, she said, "I almost didn't call." "Why did you?" "I only had 2 quarters. I dialed your number once and hung up before it rang through." She looked out the window. Then I realized if I didn't call, tomorrow everyone would explain my life back to me until I believed them. At a red light, I looked at her. I needed one person who heard what I said at dinner and wouldn't pretend I hadn't said it. I nodded because speaking felt dangerous. My apartment looked smaller with her inside it again. The same sagging couch, the same milk crate of cassettes, the same kitchen clock that lost 7 minutes a day. She stood in the doorway as if entering a museum of things we had failed to touch. "You kept the lamp," she said. "You hated that lamp. I hated that you found it in an alley and called it vintage. It has character. It has a lean." For 1 second we smiled like nothing had happened. Then everything returned. I gave her a clean t-shirt in the bed. She changed in the bathroom while I made coffee neither of us needed. When she came out, barefoot in my old Cleveland Indians shirt, I turned away too quickly. "Sorry," she said. "Don't be." She sat on the edge of the bed. I stayed in the doorway. "Blake said I'd come crawling back once I realized men like you only want women they can't have." I hated how calm she sounded. "He's wrong," I said. "Is he?" The question was not cruel. It was afraid. I leaned against the doorframe. "I wanted you when you were across the hall with wet hair and a bad mood. I wanted you when you had the flu and accused me of buying the wrong soup. I wanted you when you were dating him, and I hated myself for it. But wanting you doesn't mean I get to claim you tonight." Her eyes filled. "I don't know who I am without someone being disappointed in me," she whispered. That undid whatever speech I had left. I crossed the room and knelt in front of her, leaving space between my hands and her knees. "Then we start there." "We?" "If you want." She laughed once, shaky. "You're being too good." "No," I said. "I'm terrified." Her hand moved slowly, giving me time to refuse, and touched my cheek. We stayed like that for a long moment. Then the phone rang. Both of us flinched. Once, twice, 3 times. My answering machine clicked on. My recorded voice filled the room, awkward and flat. "You've reached Evan. Leave a message." A beep. Blake's voice came through, smooth now. "Evan, I know she's there. Tell Claire this little performance ends in the morning. Her mother is hysterical. Her father is embarrassed, and you—" A pause. "You should remember she gets bored when things stop feeling tragic." Claire went white. I reached for the phone, but she grabbed my wrist. "No." The tape kept turning. Blake said, I'll be at her parents' at 10. If she has any decency left, she'll be there. Click. The machine hummed. Claire stared at it like it had bitten her. In 1998, a message was a physical thing. It sat there on tape, impossible to unhear, waiting to be rewound and played again by anyone cruel enough. I pressed stop. Claire whispered, "Maybe he's right." I took the cassette out of the machine and held it up. "No," I said. "He just knows where to aim." Then I dropped the tape into the kitchen drawer and shut it. Claire looked at me for a long time. "What happens in the morning?" she asked. I sat on the floor beside the bed, close enough to stay, far enough to let her breathe. "In the morning," I said, "you decide your life while nobody's hand is on your shoulder." She lay down without answering. Just before sleep took her, she reached over the side of the bed and found my hand in the dark. This time, neither of us let go. Morning came gray and humid, with traffic hissing on wet pavement, and Claire asleep above me, still holding my hand. I woke with a cramp in my shoulder and a terrible tenderness in my chest. For a few minutes, I let myself imagine the simplest version. Coffee, toast, her laughing at my crooked lamp, the two of us becoming what we should have been. Then the phone rang at 8:06 and reminded us the life was never that kind. Claire sat up fast. I answered before the machine could. "Evan?" Mrs. Whitaker's voice was raw. "Is my daughter there?" Claire closed her eyes. "Yes," I said. "She's safe." A long breath. "May I speak to her?" I held out the receiver. Claire took it with both hands. "Mom." I went into the kitchen to give her privacy, but again, old apartments kept nothing fully separate. "No, I'm not coming because Blake says so. I know you're upset." "Mom, please listen. I gave the ring back because I don't want to marry him." Silence, then Claire's voice thinned. "No, Evan didn't make me do anything." I stared at the coffee pot, at the brown glass stain where I always spilled. "I said it because I was tired of lying." She came out 10 minutes later, pale but standing. "She wants me at the house before Blake gets there." "Do you want me to drive you?" "Yes," she swallowed. "But don't come in unless I ask." That hurt for half a second before I understood it was strength, not distance. "Okay." At the Whitaker house, the porch swing moved in the damp breeze. Claire sat in the passenger seat, not getting out. "I need to say something before I go in," she said. I turned off the engine. The cassette deck clicked, swallowing the silence. "I meant what I said last night," she told me, "but I don't want to run from Blake straight into you and call that healing." I nodded, though every selfish part of me protested. "I need time," she said. "Not because I'm unsure about him. Because I was too willing to disappear inside whatever man seemed most certain. I can give you time." Her smile was small and sad. "You say that now." "I've been giving you time for 2 years. I'm getting pretty good at it." That made her laugh, and the sound almost broke me. She reached over and squeezed my hand once. "Don't leave town." I wasn't planning to. I mean, don't vanish on me emotionally. Don't decide being noble means being gone. "I'll be across the hall," I said, then remembered. Metaphorically. Her eyes softened. She went inside alone. I waited in the car until 9:48. At 9:49, Blake's black Acura pulled up behind me. He got out in khakis and a pressed white shirt, looking like he'd slept fine. He tapped on my window with 2 fingers. I rolled it down. "You enjoying this?" he asked. "No." "You think she's choosing you?" "I think she's choosing herself." He smiled without humor. "That line work on late-night radio?" I said nothing. His gaze moved to the house. "Claire likes rescue. Makes her feel poetic. But eventually she'll want the life I can give her. Then let her decide that without cornering her." His jaw flexed. The front door opened before he could answer. Claire stood there with her father behind her. Mr. Whitaker's hand rested on her shoulder, not holding her in place, just there. Blake walked up the steps with his ring box in hand. I couldn't hear everything from the curb, only pieces. "Embarrassing. Wedding deposits? Think carefully." Then Claire's voice, clear enough to reach the street. "I have." She handed him a cardboard box. His things, I guessed. CDS, a sweatshirt, maybe the framed engagement photo I had once pretended not to hate. Blake stared at the box like no one had ever denied him in daylight. "This is a mistake," he said. Claire's father stepped forward. "Then it's hers." That was the moment Blake finally looked beaten. He left without shouting. Somehow that made him seem smaller. Claire did not come back to my car. Her mother appeared on the porch and wrapped both arms around her. Megan came next, crying hard. Mr. Whitaker looked toward me and gave one brief nod. It meant thank you. It also meant go. So I did. For 3 weeks, Claire and I did not touch. We talked, but carefully. She called from her parents' kitchen phone after dinner, the cord stretching as far as the pantry. I called from the radio station during songs, my voice low while oldies played through the studio glass. Sometimes we missed each other and left messages that said almost nothing because everything mattered too much. One night she left a note under my door. I got my own apartment. Not Blake's, not yours, mine. "Come see it Saturday?" Below that, in smaller writing, "I miss being your neighbor." Saturday, I arrived with a cheap houseplant and a mixtape I'd made at 2 a.m., full of songs I was too afraid to explain. Claire opened the door in jeans and bare feet. For the first time since dinner, she looked unafraid. "Hey, neighbor," she said. And this time, when she smiled, I knew part of me had finally made it home. Claire's new apartment was above a bakery on Madison Avenue, with windows that stuck in the heat and stairs that smelled like cinnamon every morning. She had bought herself a used kitchen table, 2 mismatched chairs, and a phone with a long cord that reached almost to the living room. "No couch yet," she said, taking the houseplant from me. "I like the minimalist suffering." She laughed. "Don't get comfortable. I'm becoming a woman with throw pillows." I set the mixtape on her table. Her fingers paused over it. "You made me one?" "Don't look so surprised. I'm a radio professional." "You record jingles for muffler shops." "With feeling." She smiled, but when she read the label, for when the apartment gets too quiet, her eyes changed. We listened to it sitting on the floor, backs against the wall, not touching. The tape hissed between songs. Tom Petty, Bonnie Raitt. A live version of Thunder Road I'd saved from the station archives and probably had no right copying. Halfway through side A, Claire whispered, "I'm not ready to be someone's almost wife again." "I don't want almost," I said. She turned her head. I kept my eyes on the cassette deck because courage was easier without looking at her. I'd rather wait and be real. So we waited. Not perfectly. Some nights I wanted to kiss her so badly, I had to leave before I became persuasive. Some nights she called me at the station from her kitchen phone and said, "Tell me not to call him." And I sat under the red on air sign while a baseball game played in the next room and told her gently, "Don't call him." By October, she had a couch. By November, we had our first real date at a diner with cracked red vinyl booths and a waitress who refilled our coffee like she was paid by the gallon. Claire wore a green sweater. I was so nervous I spilled cream on the table. "You've slept on my floor," she said, grinning. "Why are you acting like this is a job interview?" "Because this time I'm allowed to hope." That shut us both up. Outside the diner under a buzzing sign, she kissed me first. It wasn't dramatic. No rain, no music swelling from nowhere. Just Claire's hand on my coat, her breath shaking once before her mouth met mine. It felt less like beginning than returning. By Christmas, her family had stopped speaking carefully around me. Megan teased us without guilt. Mrs. Whitaker sent leftovers home in Cool Whip containers. Mr. Whitaker asked if I could look at the loose porch railing, then stood beside me in the cold and said, "You made her steadier." I shook my head. "She did that." He nodded. "Good answer." A year after that dinner, Claire invited me back to her parents' house. Same dining room, same grandfather clock, same table, though this time I brought pie instead of wine, because Mrs. Whitaker had learned I could not be trusted with elegance. Claire sat beside me, not across from me. Her knee rested against mine under the table like a quiet promise. At dessert, Megan lifted her fork and said, "Nobody asked any dangerous questions this year." Claire groaned. "Please don't." But her mother smiled at us, soft and knowing. Some dangerous questions save people time. Claire looked at me then, not with panic, not with apology, with peace. Later, on the porch swing, the summer air warm around us, she handed me a Polaroid Megan had taken after dinner. In it, Claire was laughing at something I'd said, and I was looking at her like I'd forgotten anyone else existed. I used to think love was someone choosing me loudly enough that I could stop doubting myself, she said. And now? She leaned her head on my shoulder. Now I think it's someone sitting beside me while I learn not to disappear. I kept that Polaroid tucked in the visor of my Ford Escort until the sun faded the edges. By the following spring, Claire and I moved into an apartment together. Not hers, not mine, but ours. The crooked lamp came with me. The throw pillows came with her. The houseplant somehow survived us both. And on an ordinary Saturday morning, while the bakery downstairs opened its doors and the whole place filled with the smell of warm bread, Claire danced barefoot in our kitchen to the same mixtape I'd made when I was still trying to be patient. She held out her hand. I took it. The tape hissed. The floor creaked. Sunlight caught the ring on her finger, not Blake's, never Blake's, but a small one we chose together after she said yes without fear. And I thought about that terrible dinner, the silence after her confession, the way her hand had found mine under the table. Back then, she called me the man she should have married. Now, every morning, she made me grateful she waited until she could choose me freely. If you had been sitting at that family dinner when Claire said, "He's the man I should have married," would you have told me to stay or walk away? What would you have done if something like my old neighbor invited me to her family dinner, then told everyone, "He's the man I should have married"? Happened to you? And have you ever mistaken kindness for something your heart was too afraid to name? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.